Okay, before we get started, what I'm about to do is actually fairly dangerous. So there will be bits of this video that I'll block things out. I'm doing this in a complete test environment, separate to any other machine that might get damaged. And I'm being very careful to only run code that I know what the outcome will be. I've been through this code and I've tested it. So let's go through the story. First of all, what's happened is a friend of mine has downloaded a video, and I've already given him the whole torrent talk and how probably shouldn't be doing that so much, but he's downloaded a video and that actually then triggered off some obfuscation based PowerShell, which is basically code that's been made obscure, unclear and unintelligible, something you can't read. And then from that PowerShell, it's downloaded some nasties from the internet and done some things to his computer. Now, as I said, as a disclaimer, I'm doing this in a controlled environment. I don't expect you to follow these steps at home, but this is just to give you an idea of how we unobfuscate a PowerShell to try and figure out what's going on. This is not the only way to do it. There are other ways to do it. There are other forms of encryption. There's even some tools out there. But in this particular case, I found nothing to help me. I just had to blindly go through it. As I mentioned, this involves a video that the person downloaded. It is a torrent. He has done something illegal, and obviously there's a sense of risk with that kind of thing. And as this person found out, not every video you download is real. This person had AVG on their machine and malware bytes, and for that matter, I've copied this file across to a network and scanned it with other products, and not very many antivirus products pick it up. So this is a newbie and rare. So let's have a bit of a play. Okay, first of all, what has he got? So here we have a folder I've called virus. In that, there's your typical torrent type style video. You've got your subtitles, a sample of the video, and of course the video itself. Looking at this, your first gut reaction, hey, I want to watch the video, double click and away you go. If you actually have a look at the actual file sizes, this actually pretends to be a real video. So here we go, we've got a 737 megabyte file. It's a .avi, so it looks like it should run. With the extensions turned on, you'll see that that is a .avi. There is no further extensions after it. So they've been pretty cluey in hiding this the way they've done it. If you look at the icons, the only real clue is that that's a real video file, and this is the fake. Very similar icon, but it's not the same, and you've got the little shortcut thing on it. So you know there's something not quite right about this. What he did is double clicked on this. PowerShell came up in the background, he never saw it. And then after that, he thought the video's not playing. My VLC player hasn't come up, so he double clicked it again, and again, and again. And of course nothing's happening. And then strange files were appearing on the desktop and odd things were happening. That's how he knew something was going on, and that's when he gave it to myself. Now this is a live demo, so if things go wrong, well, we'll just throw this laptop in the bin. Now, right click, properties. First thing I noticed is this, the target. The target is cwindows/system32 PowerShell blah blah blah, runs PowerShell. After the runs the PowerShell executable is some code. No profile, Windows style, and all sorts of bypass, etc. Now, the problem with this code, it's not complete. Shortcut's only capable of showing you a certain number of characters. If I scroll right to the end of that, it ends up with 4H70. Now, I know that's not the end of the code. So, where do I go to find out more information? He's already double-clicked this. Luckily, I happen to know that the event log keeps a history of all of that kind of thing. So if we go into the event viewer, and if we go down into this section here, you probably don't go into too much, applications and services, and Windows PowerShell. Here is everything to do with PowerShell, only PowerShell, nothing else. In here, I was able to find the full command. From that full command, I was then able to work out how it was obfuscated, and then be able to start to work out what this tool is actually doing. So if we go into that event log entry and pop it out to the clipboard and paste it into Notepad, we end up with this, which I have word wrapped. And don't get any ideas, you don't want to type this into anything, you don't want to actually use this. This is live virus code. Now if you have a look at it though, it's running through PowerShell, but what's it doing? There's not a heck of a lot here that makes any sense. You can actually encrypt this stuff at the command line using PowerShell, but that's invoking the -encrypt command. It doesn't have that anywhere in this list. So how is it encrypted? What they've done is they've used a number of splits and joins and conversions to int16 to try and hide their true intention. If you were to try and run this, you just got to make sure you don't run this on the end. So this is all piping through an invoke command to make it go off and do something. If I run that through PowerShell, you'll see what this actually spits out. Okay, so if we bring up PowerShell, up it comes, and we just paste that in. And what did it spit out? It spat out this here. So it's actually now going off to this text string, creating a new object, going off and starting a download from that address. Now that address, when you go to it in a browser, redirects to a further location. So what I'm going to do is go to that location. So let me just shut down my PowerShell and my Notepad. Now, before I get too far ahead of myself, this is what was hidden in the shortcut. No profile, Windows style hidden, so PowerShell's not going to show, execution policy bypass, and then invoke expression. One of the little tricks they've used, not only have they made this really difficult to read, is uppercase and lowercase letters and things like that to try and make it really difficult to figure out what goes on. Now in the process of running this split, see how it's got the 0 and O and I and exclamation, etc. What that does is it takes each of these things above and converts it into a 2-digit character like this. So that's the first part of the decryption. What it then does is it runs the int16 command, the char and join command to spit out that address that I was telling you about, and that goes to the following address. So going to that address brings us to this, which is obviously another bit of obfuscated code. Scrolls across and across and across and across. So what's actually happened is we've gone to a website, which has then redirected us to another website, which has then got more code on it. And as per what the PowerShell command is, it's downloading that code. And then it's going to run it. So far nothing malicious, except we've downloaded some more code. Let's find out what this new code does. So that new code that's downloaded, what does it look like? It looks like this. Again, I've got word wrap on. Looking at that, any ideas what it does? I don't. I can see something I recognise here. I can see a few things I recognise as a join. We've obviously got an IEX going to happen here. IEX is what happens when you can convert this into the text that's going to come out. I can see that's being told to run with the previous bit of code. I can see a bunch of numbers, which really means nothing. They could be char values. I can see some unusual commands in here. Commands that to PowerShell mean nothing. ISO, ICZ. So it's obfuscated. Oh, here we go. Char, another ICZ. Stuff in here that makes not a lot of sense. Not to me, not to your antivirus. So that comes down. And like I said, there's a few things in there we can see. In fact, right at the tail end, we can see some replace commands. So we can see now that that ICZ that we saw, that's not a real PowerShell command. Well, it's going to replace that. It's going to put some other bits and pieces in there. So let's find out what that comes up like. Firstly, we need to understand what it's doing. So we can see in there a bunch of things like this, which is formatting a string. So they're doing something with this text. We can see that there's actually placeholders and arrays. We can also see these things being swapped around with the replace command, and we can also see there's another invoke expression in there. So we can see that this could be quite dangerous to run. So we really want to get this to convert this text out, either by you doing it manually or by removing the invoking expression in PowerShell so it spits out the answer for you. So I've done the hard work for you, and that output that came from that website, I've removed the dangerous part that runs. I've run that in PowerShell, and it's now gone ahead and rearranged everything. So it started part of the deobfuscation. So instead of this ISO CZ thing being in the middle of the code where it was before, it's now spat this new code out. He thinks we got many layers of obfuscation here. And this new one that's popped out, it's also invoking another expression at the very end here. So we've just taken some text and we've just converted it into something a little bit easier to read, but now it's got to run through and be converted to something else yet again. Looking at the final part of that code that got spat out is this replace 7tf blah 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 char, etc, etc, etc. What is that doing? It's replacing key characters with other key characters. So you've got this char 124, this char 78 plus 80, 39, 36. You've got these char values, but what are they? Well, it's saying change the nap text with a pipe. Change the dollar with a quote, change ISO with a quote. So it's actually telling you to use the char real text value or the ASCII value to replace what's hidden in this code. So if we now run through and let the replace work, now what do we get? I've now run that replace command to replace those key values, and you'll now notice we've got a quote here and a dollar in place of those unusual commands, and we've actually got something that makes a lot more sense. So here we have again another level of obfuscation. So this virus writer does not want us to figure out what the heck these things are. Then at the very end here, you can see that it's doing some more work with chars, and it's adding text to things and changing things around, and then once it's done that, it's going to invoke whatever got created. So let's take everything before this pipe, ignoring this evoke expression, and run that through PowerShell and see what pops out. Firstly, what are we expecting? Well, here we have the bits of text you can read. Obviously there's a lot of numbers in that. And on the screen you can see here that the dollar contains the execution status of the last operation, contains true or false, etc. You can see you're setting variables, you're creating arrays, and then of course you're doing a bitwise XOR on some of the text. So we're going to, like I said, run that in PowerShell, but without this last little very dangerous bit. So I ran that command through without running the invoke expression, and all those numbers and bits and pieces turn into this. Looks like that's the last level of obfuscation. We can now see functions, we can now see what it's doing, we've got all sorts of variables being declared, all kinds of things happening, and we can see that it's testing to see if it's got access to the Windows System 32 directory, try and put a file in there, you can see if it's elevated or not. In fact, this virus writer has written quite a lot of text in here. It makes it easy to work out what's going on. All of this is doing is testing to see, can it access my system with privilege mode? And if it can, it's then zipping up to this new website, and whatever's there is downloading as a bat file. Right, so time to go to our Explorer again and download, well, have a look at what downloads from this URL. Again, the URL has actually changed, so it's being redirected to another location. So this is what's going to go into our batch file. We've got another PowerShell command with a hidden window, and as we scroll across, all it's doing is going to another website. So we've now gone through 3 or 4 levels of obfuscation, plus we're now jumping between websites. So far, no harm done. Well, really, it's downloaded some files, it's tested to see if it can elevate itself, but it's not done anything to the system yet. Let's go to this third website. And again, we get redirected to a different location. And as you'd expect, we've got more obfuscated code, which goes on and on and on and on and on. And this is being downloaded and saved to your machine. Well, let's dump that into Notepad and see what that looks like. Okay, so here's more code. And again, doesn't make a lot of sense. I can see some curly brackets, some big square brackets. I can see a lot of plus signs. Not a lot in this is in context, and again, it must be obfuscated. At the very end, you can see yet again, we've got join commands. We've got some sort of complicated algorithm being applied to it to make it hidden from view. So let's do this again. Let's run this variable through without this last command. This is putting through an IEX or running it. So we want to kind of just not run that little bit. So let's run that through PowerShell. So here I am, I've pasted it straight into PowerShell and press enter without those nasty bits on the end. And let's see what that spits out, shall we? And here's what PowerShell has spat out. So here we have another IEX hidden disguise. We have a join command. We still have all these nasty little crosses, but things have just kind of become a little bit clearer to see. Down the bottom, we can see more conversions to int16. We can see some char commands. We can see some more replace commands. A whole bunch of stuff down here. So again, let's work out which is the malicious bit, this bit at the front, and run the rest of this through PowerShell and see what spits out. So I do paste it again into PowerShell without the nasty bits and see what comes out. So the bit that I concentrated on is the bit after the join, to join all this together and run the split on it to find out what it all looks like. And I can see a few unusual things have popped out in the data format. I can't quite see what it's doing just yet. So we now need to finish running the split command correctly. So what I've got is the data that spat out. I've put the join back at the beginning, and obviously the bit at the end that does the calculation. I'm going to run that through PowerShell now and see what the result is. So here we are running it at the PowerShell, and I will paste the result into Notepad for you. So this third website that we download the text from, we've been through a join command, a split command, we've changed things to int16, we've done all kinds of messing about with that code. That final command that we ran, which looked like gibberish that we fed in, by the time it finished its calculations, this is what it's now spat out. Now that looks interesting. No longer do we have it hidden in numbers. We now have the code. So what's it doing? Deleting a whole heap of registry keys and adding some registry keys. So it's playing with Windows Defender. It's trying to stop things from finding it. After it's done all of that, as we scroll down, we've got some services it's trying to start. We've then got another file being downloaded here as an executable. Then it tries to make that a service and start it. Then we've got to go to a website for VLN player, which is possibly to play that video or possibly download more malware, don't really know. And then we've got this other executable here. So we've got bunches of stuff. We've got registry getting edited, we've got files being dumped on the hard drive, we've got executables running. Now we're starting to get to the bottom of what this does. So we grab these two executables, one there and one there, and we upload them to VirusTotal to find out exactly what we're dealing with. Okay, so we open up a browser, we go to VirusTotal, we choose the file that's stored in our little virus directory, which I've got on the desktop under virus files. Just ignore these other files, they're all the bits and pieces I use to find out what's going on along the way. So this first one, service host. We've all heard of that one before. It's a real Windows file, but not this one. In fact, this one looks pretty dangerous. And then from here, of course, we can find out what the community says about it. We can talk about what files and it downloads, what it accesses, little bits of information about it. All right, so we can say that that's without a doubt a virus, absolutely. Let's go and choose the other one. That would be this one here. And up it goes, and back it comes. And we got more comments about how bad it is. So from here, whatever detects it, we can find information on Google about these particular things. I've already gone ahead and done that, and it's a ransomware. And obviously it hasn't executed correctly because the machine has not been ransomed. Thank goodness for that. So if you can deal with my cheat sheet, I'm going to go through my notepad notes now. Yes, I use Notepad because I'm on a bare bones machine with nothing on it. And just take you through quickly what it all did and how it worked. So I'll just pull that up now. Alright, so I'm just going to maximize it out. What we have is a video file that you double click on. It's really a shortcut. It runs this command. We couldn't see the whole command, so we jumped into the event log and found the full command. We worked out from that full command, which had, see how they've done lowercase and uppercase to make it look a bit difficult to read, which we worked out was running with no profile, hidden window style, execution policy on bypass, and it was invoking an expression. We worked out from all of that if we ran a split on the code and actually told us to split it at these points, we would end up with this numbering system. If we ran that numbering system through the int16 char conversion and joined it all together, we got this command. So we converted from one obfuscation to another. Then obviously you don't want to run the IEX because that will actually kill you. Well, we'll run the command and we don't want that to happen. But we worked out that what it was doing was going to this website, and then this website redirected us to this website. From that website, it then pulled down this text, and from that text, there were a few things we could see within it. We could work out what it was doing, but we could see it was formatting strings and playing around with strings, and at the end, invoking another expression. That, after you've run it all in PowerShell without the dangerous bits, spat out this text. From that text, we then could do a replace on it, and we worked out that some of those things that looked a bit unusual were actually placeholders to soon be replaced by the replace command into other more PowerShell type commands, and that changed it to look a bit more PowerShell-y, but with a lot of numbers in it. If you pull out the text from that, you can see how it's working. It's passing one result from one procedure to the next. You can see how it was doing a bitwise XOR on it to try and bring a level of encryption or obfuscation to the code. And when we finally cracked through that, it outputted this text, which obviously is pure PowerShell script, which is how PowerShell sees it when you run the whole thing. It's just that we don't want to run the whole thing because we didn't know what it did. Now we know what it does. It goes off and tests to see it's got the rights to the machine that it needs to edit to the machine in the right directory, and then if it does, it goes off to this next website, which gets redirected to a further website, which then downloads more obfuscated PowerShell. From that PowerShell, we get all of that. Then, when we start pulling it apart and we start working out how it's joining and what it's joining, we take that output, this weird stuff becomes a little bit more like PowerShell, like this one here. Then again, that's still not fully unobfuscated. We've just removed a layer. There's a join command in there, and there's split commands hidden towards the end. I don't have word wrap on at the moment, but there's split commands in there. So once we actually go through and do that, by the way, don't run it as it is, because it does do dangerous things. But the split command, it uses various chars in place of characters. That then outputs this next piece. I've lost count how many levels now we're down. But then it goes through and we can get it to spit out this text, and then from that text we can see that there is a convert to int16 done on it. And by the time we've done that and mucked around with a few joins and splits, out comes the text. And then we can see from that text it's turning off all our antivirus, well, Defender, the basic antivirus, turning off phishing filters in Internet Explorer. It's basically making your system compromised, and then from there downloading 2 executables and redirecting you to a player, possibly because the person by now has discovered this is not a real video and therefore you need a player to be able to play it. So they probably go away to that player, and in the background this thing's installing ransomware, and then obviously your machine is compromised all over Red Rover, all using PowerShell, all tricking somebody with an AVI file where the icon has been made to look like a video file, but it looks a little bit like a shortcut. So starting again with what we had, this person's gone and torrented this particular video. They don't realise, because it looks like it's the right size, it's got the right icon. Then when they double click on it, they're giving it permission to run PowerShell, and then all that obfuscation, to the code it doesn't matter, because it runs the mathematics on it, it spits out the final result and does everything in the background. But for us to figure out what it does, we're going to remove all those layers of obfuscation to get those last 2 exe files. So those other files that you saw on the way through, I've got the original event log. Always a good idea when you are actually doing this type of thing to save out screenshots along the way. So I have the actual event log, which is this here, and I've got a screenshot of the event log. Then I've got the icon, because that icon just doesn't look right. I've got pictures of the properties to show that it's actually a link or a shortcut. And I've also got one here to show the size. So it looks like a real video, but it's not. I've got one here to show, actually, it just shows the same thing. It shows PowerShell code. And then because I know that my antivirus is going to kill everything, I've zipped it up into a RAR file with a password so I can't kill it. I've then downloaded the results from Virus Total, and that's a virus, and that's a virus. This bin file is when I outputted the int to 16 conversion. I dumped it into a binary file just to see if it was an executable at that point, but it wasn't actually, so you can ignore the bin file. But they're all the files, all the bits and pieces. I haven't used any weird software to pull apart the obfuscation. There is a PSD code module out there you can download and plug into your PowerShell and let it try and decode these things, but it mainly deals with base 64 encryption, and this was not done that way. This was done many different ways over 5 or 6 levels to try and hide what its true nature is. So what we have here is a innocent person at home downloading a video file, double clicks on it, and then 2 minutes, 3 minutes later their machine gets encrypted. What we've done, and what the purpose of what I've just shown you is to show you how to pull apart this virus. PowerShell can be used as a virus or a tool to download other further viruses. Just to give you a bit of an idea of the power of PowerShell and why you need antivirus, a good antivirus, and why you need to be very careful what you do. Playing with torrents can be very dangerous. It's a hacker's playground out there. So be very careful. Obviously, what I've just shown you is not easy. It's taken me 4 days to deobfuscate these things, And what I've shown you in a very short period of time is what I actually did over that 4 days. Hopefully you've got something out of this, and hopefully you can put it to use. Thank you for your time.